Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this training. I hope everybody is excited and looking forward to learning. So my name is Soufiane El Amrani. I'm a self-advocate, but I'm also Inclusion Europe's easy to read and self-advocacy expert. Today's training will be about what is easy to read and how you can create easy to read documents for your organization. But first, let me tell you a little bit about what Inclusion Europe is and what we work for. We fight for equal rights and full inclusion of people with intellectual disability and their families, because we want to see a world where people with intellectual disabilities enjoy the same rights as everyone else, everywhere, all the time. This map shows us the number and types of members of Inclusion Europe. We have 20 self-advocacy members, 40 full members, and 17 regional members in 38 different countries. Inclusion Europe represents 20 million people with intellectual disability in Europe. Now we get to the easy to read training. First, I want to explain why it is so important. Easy to read information lets people with intellectual disabilities learn new things, make their own choices, know their rights, stand up for themselves. Also they can take part in society like everyone else. Not only does it help people with intellectual disabilities, it can be useful for everyone. It can help those who speak a different language. It can help everyone understand difficult words. Now, I will give you some tips and rules on how to create an easy to read document. First, and mostly important, you must remember these points. Use words that are easy to understand. If you need to use a difficult word, make sure you explain it. Try and only say one thing for each sentence. Always use full names. Do not use abbreviations or pronouns. For example, write European Union, not EU, and write Soufiane goes shopping, not he goes shopping. And lastly, make sure you always have a person with an intellectual disability read and check the text. Inclusion Europe created guidelines for how to create an easy to read document. I was on the team which created these guidelines. It contains useful tips for making videos, websites, audios, and leaflets accessible. It is available in 16 languages. Now, here are some key tips for creating easy to read text. These rules can be used by your organization to make your documents easy to read. I've given you some basic rules already, but when you begin writing an easy to read text, you need to think about these practical questions. 1, who is going to read this text? And importantly, what exactly do you want to say to them with this text? And again, it is very, very important that a person with an intellectual disability is involved in the making. Here are some do's when it comes to writing in easy to read. Make sure you use words that people know well. Hard words must be explained. Make sure you use the same word for the same thing throughout the text. Write in short sentences. And now here are some do nots. Do not use abbreviations or pronouns. Do not use different language unless you have to. Do not use big numbers. Do not write numbers, use digits instead. Here are some tips on how the text should look. You should use big letters. I like to use Arial 14. Make sure you have line spacing of 1.5 and double spacing between the paragraphs. Always have your text aligned to the left, and it's helpful if you number your pages. It's extra helpful to add pictures to the document This makes the document easier to read and to remember. And I cannot say how important it is always to involve the person with intellectual disability in the drafting. This is why I have given it its own slide. Now you know how to make an easy to read document. The last thing you can do before publishing easy to read text on your website or elsewhere is you can add our easy to read logo. This little dude with the thumbs up is Inclusion Europe's easy to read logo. The logo helps those with intellectual disability to know that the information is available in easy to read. You can add, and you should add, this little dude to any document you have written in easy to read, following the rules I have talked about in this training. You don't need permission as long as you follow these rules. Okay, now we will look at why easy to read is important for equality bodies. In a perfect world, equality bodies would have easy to read translation for everything they do. But of course, this is not a perfect world. The most important step is to have an easy to read translation available for anything that is related to persons with intellectual disabilities. The equality body's contact information should be available in easy to read. This makes sure that your organization is accessible to people with intellectual disabilities. When news or updates are published, an easy to read translation should be provided. For example, news about big events like COVID-19 or changes in the law. Here you can see some examples of complicated text we worked on at Inclusion Europe to make them into easy to read. This is an example of the Istanbul Convention. We worked on it with Autism Europe. Autism Europe is another NGO. It took us a lot of time because the detail of violence are complicated to explain. We had put a lot of the explanations at the end. You can find the full text on the link of this presentation. MEP Katrin is a German MEP. She wrote a report on employment of people with disabilities. She did two great things with this report. First, she consulted Inclusion Europe to have information about the employment situation of people with intellectual disabilities in Europe. Then, once the report was drafted, she asked us to do a summary of the report in easy to read. The last example is the report of MEP Saliba. MEP Saliba is an MEP working on the petition committee. He wrote a report on all the petitions that were about people with disabilities. This is why he wanted to make an easy to read version of the summary of the report. You can find the Word and the PDF document on the link in this presentation. Since then, some other MEPs have asked us to do reports in easy to read. It is a great success. Before I finish up, I leave you with some useful links about easy to read. I believe this presentation will be shared with everyone after, so you can access these links. This brings me sadly to the end of the training. I hope you have learned a lot about what is easy to read and how you can create easy to read documents for your organization. I really enjoyed sharing my knowledge today. If you have any questions, I will happily answer after this presentation, or you can email me on the address on the screen. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to look at a practical example from the work of equality bodies, which will start with an overview from the colleagues of the Commission for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Malta. So I want to introduce you to Christine Mifsud, Lorraine Pleven, and Isabel Bonello, sorry. And Christine explained to me that There will be some questions to Isabel in English. Isabel will respond in Maltese, and then they will translate for her. So bear with us while we give space for Isabel to be able to explain everything that she needs, and then for the translation to happen. Over to you, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for the invite. We are happy to be here today. I am Christine. I work with the Commission for the Rights of Persons with Disability. For those of you who are not acquainted, this is the National Commission for the Rights of Disability here in Malta. We are the independent mechanism who monitors and regulates and makes sure that legislation articles related to persons with disability are being implemented here in our country. We work with the department or with the Directorate of Disability Issues, and together with the Ministry of Inclusion, Voluntary Sector and Consumer Rights. I'm going to talk a bit now about the disability equality training for those of you who wish to know how we can spread more awareness, how we spread awareness in our country. I myself am a disability equality trainer, and together with Isabel and a team of 3 other persons who all have different kinds of disability. There's mobility, the mobility impairments, deaf, autism spectrum, intellectual, and myself, who talk about the visual impairments. We reach out to all public and private entities, educational sectors, and we offer training to give knowledge to people all around, even in schools at a young age, about the importance of the models of disability, the legislation protecting persons with disability, and most importantly, related to today's topic, is that we spread awareness about the importance of providing information in accessible formats to all persons with disability, such as sign language, audio versions, soft copies, as you said, easy to read, and other formats which will help the person communicate better and get all the information he needs to help with independence. That is more or less our job at CRPD. To you, Lorraine.
Thank you, Christine. So basically, I wanted to mention a few important points when it comes to creating easy-to-read documents. Basically, we at CRPD have been working on easy-to-read documents for a number of years now. And some examples of the documents which we produced in easy-to-read include, for example, the Equal Opportunities Act, the UN CRPD, summaries of research reports, policies and strategies, leaflets, and other important information. For example, we created some documents related to COVID-19 with important information for people with intellectual disabilities. As part of our work, we also at times assist other entities who also need to create easy-to-read documents. So here locally, for example, we assisted the health department to create a leaflet in easy-to-read on a vaccine, on a particular vaccine, or on the importance of breast screening. So we do not create the document ourselves, but we try to assist other entities who never created documents in easy-to-read so that they can do them themselves. And we also obviously suggest that they follow the guidelines of Inclusion Europe on easy-to-read. In fact, we refer to the guidelines. And we also help them with the proofreading of their documents. So apart from the guidance, we try also to help them when they create a document. We since we have Isabel, who very kindly checks the documents which we produce, she also at times checks documents of other entities who would like to create documents and easy to read. So we provide this kind of assistance. When it comes to producing easy to read documents, it is not always an easy task, as you may be aware, especially when the original document is quite long and there are difficult words. However, with practice, it gets better, and we learn more. So even how to translate certain words, it gets better. We try to keep these easy-to-read documents as short as possible by translating only the most important things in the document and not every single thing. And this was quite a challenge for us to learn, as it's quite, you have to pick out the most important things basically from the document. And we also include a note in the very first pages of each easy-to-read document that we create, which basically says that the document is a shorter, easy-to-read version of the longer document. And we also place the link of the longer document for further information, so that the person reading the document will know that it's a shorter, easier-to-read version of the other longer document. We also include definitions next to important words, which are difficult to understand, and pictures, obviously. With regards to the proofreading of the easy-to-read documents, as I said, our colleague Isabel regularly checks these documents, and she provides us with feedback so that we can amend. And Isabel is here today, and she will explain her work with regards to proofreading of these easy-to-read documents.
Thank you, Lorraine. I also wish to add, as was already mentioned, that the use to easy-to-read format is not only used here in Malta by persons with intellectual impairment, but it has also been found useful for persons who are deaf or hard of hearing, and also people who are neurodiverse, people who are neurodiverse on the autism spectrum. Now, as I said, I'm going to ask questions to Isabel. I'll ask in English, and Isabel will reply in Maltese. Then I will gladly translate for her. First question, how does easy-to-read help you, Isabel?
Easy-to-read formati jgħini billi nkun nista nifhem il-kliem tqil li jkun diffiċli għalija biex nifhem.
Easy-to-read helps me to understand better words which are difficult for me to understand, and it facilitates these words for me. How do you help to create this easy-to-read format after Lorraine gives you the document to review?
Jiena najna billi naqra l-easy-to-read document u Lorraine tatini ġimma sħiħa biex naqra sewa. Mbagħad intija feedback ta' jekk irrimtux jew le. Unbidlu fejn hemm bżonn.
Okay. Lorraine passes me the content, so I can read it and see if it is understandable. It takes me about a week to go through this document, and then we review it again together, Lorraine and myself, to see which words need to be changed. How do you prepare the document so it's more understandable, Isabel?
Jena lija biex jiġi aktar jiftijem rrit imirit ikun bi kliem sempliċi bil-font kbir u bl-istampi.
Okay. For me, so the material is understandable. It needs to be with simple words, less sentences, a large font, and with visuals like pictures. Which problems do you face, Isabel, when you are starting to prepare these documents?
Meta jkun hemm kliem tqil u diffiċli għalija biex nifhmu jew ikun diffiċli biex nbidlu xi kliem biex nagħmluhom aktar sempliċi.
The difficulties I find is when there are difficult words or words which cannot be simplified so as to make the material easier. What does this mean for you working on this material, Isabel? As for you personally, since you need this material for your independence and for other people who have the same intellectual impairment as you.
Dan huwa importanti għalija biex nkun nista' nifhmu aħjar għax bil-istampi jgħinu nkun iktar indipendenti u nkun nista' naqrah u nifhmu aħjar. Huwa importanti wkoll li niċċekkja l-easy to read material biex nkunu aktar ċerti li d-dokument huwa faċli għal persuni b'disabilità oħra biex jifhmuh.
It is very important for me that I can understand this material so as to be independent and I know what I'm reading, even on current situations. And for me, it is very, very important for me as a person with intellectual impairment to check myself, the material, so it is accessible for others like myself. Complete.
Ġieli kien hemm drabi wkoll li kien hemm persuni b'disabilità intellettwali oħra li iċekkjaw id-dokument u mhux jiena biss.
There have been times when we really wanted to make sure the document was accessible, that other persons with intellectual impairment were involved, not just myself, so we make sure that we have the best outcome. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel.
Thank you.
Basically, as Isabel was saying, proofreading of easy-to-read the documents is very important to make sure that the document is easy to understand. And we also carry out the necessary changes after Isabel's feedback. And she checks the documents again, even after the changes that we made, so that she confirms that she can understand the document. Obviously, as Isabel mentioned, there are some challenges. and important points to keep in mind. These are a few. Basically, when it comes to long documents, as I said, it's very important that we keep the document as short as possible and only translate and easy to read the most important things. This can be a challenge, especially if, for example, it's a 60-page document. We basically summarize and pick the most important things from the document and then translate those in easy to read. Sorry. Basically, with regards to difficult words, as Isabel mentioned, some important words are difficult to understand and at times cannot just be removed from the document. They would require an explanation or a definition. We try to keep these important and difficult words in the documents and we explain them rather than remove them completely. So just to give an example, for example, once we were working on a leaflet, which was about the changes in the cohabitation bill here in Malta, which had been recently introduced. And Isabel could not understand the word cohabitation. And basically she asked me to remove this word. But it was important that this was kept there because this was the name of the actual bill. So then we discussed and we left it there and worked on a simpler definition. And now Isabel can understand what the word means, even when she hears it on television, for example. So that's how we go about these difficult words. Another challenge is also finding people to proofread the documents. Sometimes it can be a challenge to find one or more people to proofread easy to read documents. I mean, in our case, it's a bit easier because Isabel is our colleague and we can pass the documents to her. But obviously, with other entities, it's not that easy to find people who can check the document and proofread it, and also have some experience as well. And also to find other people besides Isabel to also check the document, because if the document is checked by more than one person, it's even better. So in addition, one person with intellectual disability may understand the easy-to-read document, and another person with intellectual disability may find it more difficult to understand the same document. So there may be a challenge over there, and that's why it's important to sometimes have more than one person to check the document and provide feedback. We also encourage other entities to produce easy-to-read material because we believe that it's something that everyone can learn. Obviously, with time you get better, but we do encourage other entities. And as I said before, we help with the proofreading of the documents. And then we provide feedback with the words that they need to change. So we give them feedback. We tell them, for example, this word, it's better if you change it to or add a definition to it. So basically, these are the main points which I wanted to mention with regards to our experience with creating easy-to-read documents. Thank you.